The broadcast is now starting. All attendees are in listen-only mode.
Hello, everybody, and thank you for joining us today. My name is Brittany Dufilly. I'm the Educational and Outreach Coordinator here at Verteks. Today, we have Mike Dufilly, my handsome husband. He's going to be talking about admin changes, but also going over some of the new things with 19.3 and then what's coming in the future. Mike, I will let you go ahead and start your presentation. And if anybody has any other questions, let us know.
Alrighty, thank you, Brittany. Good afternoon, everyone. Thanks for taking a little time to join us once again today. Wanted to do something, again, a little bit different. I try to add some variety here to some of these webinars. I know we kind of talk about the same things a lot over and over, but I do like to take a step back and maybe do something a little more directional. We definitely have some new information to share with everyone out there, obviously regarding Connect, but we want to talk about some of that here today. And so the topic of the webinar I wanted to talk about today was kind of where we are from a kind of firmware software perspective with Connect. So we obviously have the current version of firmware that's out there, 19.3 SP3. I know we've been kind of busily upgrading a lot of systems out there to this code. You know, the past several code releases really have been kind of focused on some specific new features that have been added for regulatory reasons, like RABOMS Act compliance and things like that. But mostly kind of defect fixes, security enhancements, bug fixes, things like that. And kind of talk about where we are currently in the 19.3 SP3, but also talk about the version that's going to be coming the end of the year, version 20, and what's going to be included there, and then kind of what we're looking at past that, you know, as we come here to what Mitel has announced as will be the end of life for the Connect platform, which we'll talk about here at the end. So currently, the current release, MiVC Connect 19.3 SP3 is our current release. And in 19.3 generally, they've added a number of new features. The first one, which a lot of people may or may not know about, this hasn't been a huge request. A lot of customers that wanted this feature implemented it with their 400 series phones, but the new model phones, the 6900 series, the actual Mitel branded phones, for a while, we did not have a teleworker solution for those phones. With the 400 series phones, we had the Edge Gateway appliance that we could use to provide remote phone capability for the 400 series phones. But for a long time, we didn't have that same capability with the 6900 series phones. We didn't have the ability for someone to just take a phone home and use it over the internet. In 19.3, actually a few versions ago, they did add that feature to the phones. It's kind of not really built into Director the same way that the Edge Gateway was. It requires use of an in-gate separator as kind of the VPN gateway appliance, and it does require some special licensing for the in-gate to use it in that teleworker mode for phones. So the setup burden's a little bit higher than it was setting up an Edge Gateway, I think, in a lot of cases. So we haven't actually seen a lot of adoption of this. In a lot of cases, people are still continuing to use the Edge Gateway in the 400 series phones they have. But if you were looking for a teleworker solution for your 6900 series phones, obviously those are the only ones we can purchase new now from Mitel. We do have that solution available using the in-gate separator as kind of the VPN gateway appliance, just like the Edge Gateway, and some licensing associated just depending on how many phones you want to use remotely. Again, just like the Edge Gateway. Also included in 19.3 was a Connect client refresh. I think everyone's kind of used to the really blue client we have now. There were some defect fixes and things like that behind the scenes. Again, additional capabilities were added to support RABOMS Act, specifically a Mitel software component that allows users to report their address was added. So in systems where you have mobile users, teleworkers who are using cell phone from a laptop from anywhere. There are new requirements to make sure that we can collect location data from those users so that if they were to dial emergency services over the cell phone, they could get directed to the correct address, and changes were made to the client to integrate that functionality. Also, if you're not familiar, the rest of your IT team probably definitely is. Microsoft retired deprecated basic authentication early this year for most of their tenants. With that, we lost the ability to integrate with Microsoft Exchange Online, specifically for things like calendar integration with the Connect client, things like that. So in 19.3, we did get the ability restored to us to authenticate again with Microsoft using their more modern OAuth authentication system, which again requires a bit more setup. We had to set up an Azure app registration. You do have to have your on-premise directory synced with 365. We can't set it up in cloud-only accounts. And we do also have to have the AD integration enabled in Director. The user has to be AD integrated. If we can kind of check all those boxes, we can bring back the Microsoft integration, which really was just calendar integration with the client and with the conference bridge, and the contact integration plugin in Outlook. Basically, that allows those two things to work. For a lot of clients, obviously, we've set this up in some cases. A lot of clients didn't find the juice kind of worth the squeeze to set all this up just to get calendar integration working. So a lot of people have just kind of gone without that functionality since Microsoft moved away from basic auth. But that we do have the ability to bring that back if needed. An important one from a security perspective that we have is the ability now to disable TLS 1.0 and 1.1 and the anonymous FTP, with some caveats here. For a very long time, the TLS 1.0 was simply required to be on because they still had things in code that relied on it. They did do a lot of work in 19.3 to get rid of that where possible. So we do have it enabled as an option. In a lot of cases, we still aren't able to completely turn that off if the system has any older legacy components. So SG switches in particular, and any MGCP based phones. So the 200 series or older phones. If you still have any of those components on your system, we still have to keep TLS 1.0 enabled. And that'll continue as long as you have those components there as part of the system. We have to leave TLS enabled. Also, currently, contact center, if you're using ECC, we still cannot disable TLS 1.0, although we're anticipating that to change with version 20. There will be an update included there to contact center, which will allow us to disable TLS 1.0 in situations where ECC was the holdup, the reason why we couldn't there. Also, the anonymous FTP, this was a frequent one that would come up on a lot of vulnerability scans. We get asked about it a lot. We do have the ability to turn off that anonymous FTP access. They did basically write all of that out of code. Even before the change, there were ways you could kind of disable it and work around it, but now we have a official supported way to disable anonymous FTP with just a checkbox in Director. Kind of already mentioned this in passing, but a large number of improvements, particularly related to compliance with Ray-Baum's Act. This was a major regulatory change that forced kind of all the major PBX manufacturers to kind of quickly adapt their product to meet their requirements of the law. And really, a lot of the work had to be done around identifying mobile users. Obviously, if you have a phone in a fixed location, it's very easy to figure out where that is. But for devices that are mobile, if you're using a cell phone on a laptop in a Starbucks somewhere, the way that the law is written means that the PBX has to be able to have some mechanism to gather that address information and potentially provide it to an emergency provider if you make a 911 call. So a lot of that functionality was added in the 19.3 release. We'll take a look here in a second. I'll show you where some of these changes are in Director if you're looking for them. But specifically, a lot of changes were made to support this kind of mobile user endpoint location scenario. Another major change that a lot of people certainly noticed, if weren't really happy about, was the ability to support the 988 suicide hotline. Again, it was a regulatory change that, in this case, required some actual changes to the way dialing works in the system. So unfortunately, because of the need to be able to dial just 988 and have that go to the suicide hotline the same way you might dial 911, we unfortunately had to remove the ability to dial 7 digits in the system. So with this addition of support for the 988 suicide hotline, we lost the ability to dial 7 digits from the phones. That was unfortunate, but kind of given the way that dialing works and the fact that most systems have 9 as a trunk access, and there are still 88X numbers that are toll-free. Basically, you can't have those two things and 7-digit dialing all together at the same time. So something had to go, and 7-digit dialing was it. And then finally, a large number of security defect fixes. Sometimes these were very visible, sometimes not. There has been a large amount of support from the information security community recently, taking a look at some of the obviously older ShoreTel code, but newer Mitel code as well, and some researchers who have actually been kind of specifically focused on that and helping to find defects in that recently. So that has uncovered, a pretty large number of software or security defects that Mitel has been fixing, and they've been incorporating most of those fixes into our new releases here. So these are mostly for publicly facing components of the system, like the Edge Gateway, Mobility Router, and Conference Bridge. But there have been some additional defect fixes related to Director, and obviously things like the TLS and anonymous FTP have been a big part of that as well. So real quick, I do want to take a little bit of time to just show you where some of these changes are in Director. So obviously, if you have your own system updated and you wanted to make some of these changes, you can find them here yourself. Just to pull up our Director here, most of the settings you'll find here, obviously under the administration section, and a lot of them live under the system section and additional parameters here. Oops. Back in again. So here we are, we're at system, additional parameters, kind of a place where if they weren't sure where to put a setting, it ended up here. And so a lot of the new settings ended up here. But right up top, you'll notice a couple of new checkboxes here for some of the specific things we just talked about. So we have a checkbox here that allows us to enable or disable TLS 1.0. It does mention there that does require a switch reboot, so be aware of that. Also, the ability to enable or disable the anonymous FTP server here, as well as a feature, again, this was added for some specific Ray Baum scenarios, to use the jack number from the IP address map field. So we now have 2 places where we can fill out the jack number field, which is has been traditionally used to indicate location data for a particular extension. We now have the ability to map that to specific IPs, which is required for certain wire mapping scenarios for fixed devices. Also on this page, if you scroll down a little bit, you'll see here some settings related to this Exchange server section. This is where we set up our integration with 365 or Exchange Online. Again, that does have to be done now through an Azure app registration. So if you've done that before, you'll probably be familiar with these app IDs and tenant IDs. And we do have instructions and can help you set that up in your environment if you're not sure how to do that or want to tackle that. Again, it doesn't give you a whole lot. It gives you calendar integration with the Connect client and the contact plugin in Outlook. The voicemail plugin has been deprecated. I didn't mention that, but kind of the third plugin we had for Outlook, the voicemail plugin, no longer functions at all. That's been fully deprecated now with 19.3, and it is not coming back. So for voicemail, our options are to listen to it from the Connect client itself or from a phone, but we do also still have the attachment option, so you can still receive your voicemail with an email WAV file attachment. It's just the Outlook plugin that integrated voicemail inline in Outlook is gone and kind of hasn't been working for a while. So I don't think there are a lot of people out there who still use it, but just worth mentioning, I think. So yeah, the major security enhancements here you can find under the additional parameters section here in Director. All right. Oh, and one last thing I did mention here, continuing phone firmware fixes. Obviously, this has been, again, a big focus of the continuing development in Connect is to really squash a lot of the phone firmware bugs that have been present over the years and have just kind of gotten worse on the older phones as Connect has evolved. They've been really trying to squash as many of those as possible, and we are still aware that there are some out there still, and it continues to be a important focus of Mitel's to get all those bugs squashed. All right, so real specifically, some just new features in the very latest release, the SP3 release of 19.3. A big one for us has been the 6900W phone compatibility, mostly because this has been the only model of phone that Mitel has been manufacturing for a little while. So if we wanted to order a new phone, it had to be a W model, and the W models have built-in Wi-Fi. And Mitel basically, because of manufacturing constraints around COVID, decided that they were just going to kind of go down to manufacturing a single model of phone, and that W model was it. So for a while, we did not have the proper compatibility in Director for the 6900W phones, and we do now in SP3, so they do show up properly. We don't have to jump through any extra hoops to use those phones in Connect. Again, some additional security updates, specifically for some defects and vulnerabilities in the service appliance, the conference bridge appliance specifically. A big one for us that was introduced in the very latest one also is the ability to change the default admin and root passwords for the appliances. Again, for a very long time, the appliances, the SG switches, ST switches, the virtual appliances had hard-coded passwords that couldn't be changed. And obviously that represents a security vulnerability and risk. And Mitel added the ability for us to, again, change those default passwords in code now. And in fact, when we do upgrade a system to the SP3 release, and the passwords are left at their defaults, we'll actually get a little pop-up when you sign into Director letting you know that those passwords are still default and that it recommends changing them. Of course, we talked about anonymous FTP, the ability to disable that. I believe in SP3, it's now disabled by default. So that was a bigger change they made there. Of course, our security updates we talked about. Some director GUI defect fixes. So basically, these were status display issues, in particular around the ST2D switch, where that switch supports 2 PRIs, but it would always show as red if you only had one plugged in. So they did fix that so that it will properly report the status of both of its PRI spans if it's using 2 or only 1. I've still noticed a few issues around the way that the ST2D in particular displays in Director, so I don't think they quite have all of that fixed, but they are still working on that GUI defect, and that's all it is. It's strictly a status display problem. The switch functions properly, but it looks like it has a problem when it doesn't. Also, they did do some work to fix some known problems with, again, the older phones, the MGCP phones, the 200 series, having some issues with hunt group audio in 19.3. They did introduce a fix for some of those in SP3. So definitely, if you're having some problems with hunt group audio and you're still using the 200 series phones, there are some fixes for you in SP3 if you haven't gotten those already. All right. Again, real quick, since we just talked about the password issue, again, I'll show you real quick in Director where to update those passwords for your switches. Obviously, Verteks, we're doing this as part of the upgrade, changing those passwords and documenting them and sharing them with you. So if you don't have them, and we did the upgrade, we'll know what they are, and we should have communicated them to you. But where you go to change that in the system is under, in this case, appliances and servers, and then options. And again, you'll see a section here added to this page where we can, from Director, set the admin and root passwords for the appliances. And again, if those are default on your system after you've been upgraded to SP3, you'll actually see a little banner at the bottom of the window in red, letting you know that those are still set to their defaults and should be changed. All right, so that's kind of where we are currently. I want to talk a little bit about what we know about the next release, which is actually going to be a new major version. They're calling it MiVC Connect version 20. We've been in the 19 release branch here for a while. But this next release is going to be a new major release. I don't know that it's actually going to be significantly different than what we have today, but I think that for a lot of reasons, they want to put kind of a bow on this, and we'll talk about it, what's coming after 20 here. But what we're expecting, and this is hopefully going to be or on schedule to be released at the end of the year, so November, December timeframe. 20 will be out. And what is coming? Mitel's committed to a fix for kind of a long-standing deficiency or something that's been missing for a while in the mobility platform, which is a lack of push notification. It's really hampered some of the use cases for mobility, especially getting notifications for IMs and other things like that. Just none of that has really worked quite right. This has been kind of a long-standing fix that we've been waiting on for a while, and they've committed to actually making sure that that comes in with 20. So if you have mobility and have been waiting for the push functionality to come back, that is coming back in 20. That they said they're going to get that fixed for sure. Also, a major change in 20 is going to be a new version of Linux for the appliances. So any of the virtual, the V switches or the ST switches. They have used CentOS. Red Hat kind of announced end of life for CentOS a while back. They were changing the way that the CentOS distribution worked, and it really wasn't going to be suitable as sort of a stable platform to use for the appliances. So Mitel is moving that over to what's called Rocky Linux, which is designed to be a replacement for CentOS, a more enterprise-focused, stable kind of Red Hat enterprise Linux-based distribution that is going to be maintained by the community going forward, since Red Hat announced their changes. So it really shouldn't impact any of the software. It's meant to be 100% bug for bug, reproducible swap out for CentOS, but they do need to make that change so that they can continue to support the equipment into the future here. They are going to be upgrading the version of MySQL that's used again on the system to version 8. We've been in the version 5 realm here for a while. Obviously, it's sort of an enabling technology. There are a whole lot of reasons why we want to make sure that that gets updated as best we can, obviously to help keep security defects out of the system, but also for performance and supportability reasons. So they're going to be working an upgrade of the MySQL version in there. We are also looking for some updates to Contact Center. Not really any features or functionality being added, but some under the hood upgrades to the version of OpenSSL that's being used and the version of MySQL that it uses. So it's still going to be kept in the MySQL 5s for Contact Center, but they're going to be upgrading OpenSSL, and hopefully this will allow us to disable TLS 1.0 again on those systems where Contact Center is kind of the only reason we can't. They're going to update the libraries that it uses so we can improve the security of that system. So some additional security updates and fixes, and kind of another important one here. Obviously more of kind of the same, if there's any security defects or anything like that, bugs that are known, those are going to continue to get fixed. Another big one that has to do with the default passwords is we are anticipating in version 20 that they're going to give us at least the ability to change the default database password. This is, again, kind of a hard-coded, well-known password. It's part of the system to access the MySQL database that everything runs in. They are planning to add the ability for us to update that in version 20. We're not sure whether that's going to be kind of a forced update or whether we'll still be able to continue using the old one. I anticipate it'll probably be the latter, mostly because most third-party applications rely on that, knowing that hard-coded password to function, even a lot of Mitel's own applications. So part of what Mitel has been doing in anticipation of this release is actually going through and updating things like the call recorder application and a lot of the pro services apps so that they can continue to function after we gain the ability to change that default database password. Again, a big security change. It's just bad practice to have these hard-coded passwords and kind of legacy configurations left. So Mitel's doing what they can to fix that so that we have a more secure platform here for the next several years. Additional device support. So they are going to be adding support for some devices we don't have now, including, hopefully, there's an asterisk there because they haven't fully committed to this yet, but the 5634 Wi-Fi handset, which is another kind of Mitel branded handset you can use now with My Voice Business System. We don't have support for in Connect, but potentially looking at adding that, as well as some additional support for the 6900 series phones. So the ability to manage their ringtones, wallpaper, things like that, things we could do with the 400 series phones that we can't do now with the 6900 series. They're going to be looking to add that functionality. Additionally, again, an asterisk on this one. It hasn't been fully committed yet, but we're hoping to get improved certificate handling on the 6900 series phones. Specifically, we don't have the ability to import certificates now into the 6900 series. So if you're using self-signed certificates or want to use self-signed certificates with the system, this has been something that's been preventing us from doing that. is the fact that the 6900 series phones don't support the ability to add trusted third-party root certificates and things like that. So we're looking to have the ability to do that in version 20 so that we have support for internal PKI and self-signed certificates, or enterprise CA signed certificates, I should say. And also kind of a good one, a new feature that's coming is hopefully integration with Mitel's CloudLink chat platform. CloudLink is the kind of cloud service platform that Mitel has for the MiVoice business system, and it's supported a number of different functions for that PBX over the years, including chat and things like that. So they're looking to integrate the CloudLink chat capability into the system to use with the Connect client. This would be basically a cloud-provided service that would be available to you as long as you had active support on the system included. And it would replace the conference bridge, the service appliance, as the backend needed for the chat functionality in the system. So currently, if you do want to use the built-in IM feature in the Connect client, we have to deploy a service appliance, a virtual service appliance, or physical service appliance to make that work as the backend for that. And this would replace that with the CloudLink chat system, which is again just a cloud-provided service. So it'd be Mitel server instead of your own for IM. And then finally, a big one, I think probably the partners and people who have to support it are a little happy about, which is Secure Boot. Or it's still the scenario today that Mitel servers have to have their Secure Boot support disabled in BIOS in the settings of the VM, because Mitel still unfortunately has an unsigned driver that has to be used. So they've been working through the process with Microsoft to get that driver signed officially by Microsoft so that we can have it function on systems with Secure Boot enabled. And we're hoping that that process finishes up at some point so we can integrate that in release 20. And that'll help us add compatibility for a number of additional private cloud platforms where in some cases, if we don't have the ability to disable Secure Boot, or they don't have it disabled, then we can't use it on those systems. So hopefully that will enable us to support the system, again, moving forward for the next several years. So we are anticipating that this version 20 is likely going to be the final major release of MiVoice Connect. We'll look ahead. I have another slide here, but last month Mitel did come out with some anticipated lifecycle guidance for us, where they announced finally some dates for things. But kind of the basic story is that the end of 2029, so December 31st, 2029, will be end of life for Connect. A whole lot of reasons for that. The big ones, honestly, the biggest one is that Microsoft is discontinuing support for TAPI in newer versions of Windows Server. So unfortunately, ShoreTel was written using primarily that TAPI interface as kind of the underlying engine that did all the call routing and call decision making as part of a Windows server. And Microsoft is retiring those components. So for a whole lot of reasons, it's just not going to be tenable to maintain the Connect platform the way they have over time in the past. And so they've announced some dates, important dates for us, as we come through basically the end of the decade. We anticipate, Connect at that point will be end of life. And Mitel is hoping to have most customers hopefully migrated over to the MiVoice business platform or another alternative platform ahead of that. So, the important takeaway there is obviously nothing is going to stop working. Everything is going to continue to be supported. Mitel has done a great job putting together plans and offers so that your investment that you've made in the ShoreTel system and the Mitel system is protected through like-for-like licensing offers and a whole bunch of great promotions on even things like new hardware and things like that. So really the purpose of these lunch and learns is to talk about all of that. So I highly recommend, if you haven't registered for one of the 2 lunch and learns in Tampa or Orlando, and you're really curious about planning for kind of Connect's end of life transition here, those would definitely be the places where you'd want to start. And we are going to be holding, after those lunch and learns, a major webinar to talk about these changes as well. But with that, with 20 probably being the last major version, we do expect that we are going to settle into, I think, a more stable scenario for Connect and Contact Center. Here, kind of coming up at the end of next year, we do expect that kind of at the end of next year, certainly all feature development for Connect will cease at that time, and we'll just be getting kind of bug and defect fixes. So we do anticipate that we are going to settle into a very stable version of Connect here for the remainder of its life. So we're probably not going to see frequent updates or anything like that coming here after version 20. It's going to be kind of defixes, bug fixes, stability fixes to keep everything running smoothly after that point. So here is what that timeline looks like. Again, it runs through kind of the end, December 31st, 2029 is the actual end of technical support, really end of life. The other big important date that we have that's coming up is this end of add-on sales, which is coming at the end of next year, so December 31st, 2024. This is going to be important because after that date, we're not going to be able to sell any new licensing or new components at that point. So that's new hardware, including new phones. That includes software licenses for even just users, things like that. So if you are in a situation where you're anticipating major changes or major growth to your system, definitely something we want to start having conversations with both internally and with us here at Verteks before that end of add-on sales date on December 31st, 2024. Because after that point, we'll be able to continue technical support through the end of that technical support period, but we're not going to be able to make large changes to systems after that point. So I think that's going to be the big one that I think will be we'll want to keep in mind again moving forward. Like I said, Mitel is definitely committed to making sure that your investment is kept, and that's what they want to talk about the lunch and learns. But we have a great number of programs for different scenarios. But basically, I mean, the biggest one is just a like-for-like license replacement. So they'll give you the licensing for free for the equivalent MiVoice business system, essentially, as long as your system is on active support. And then we have a large number of options to deal with things like phone hardware and things like that. So again, really great program. We do have transition options, and we do know that it's going to take time to transition a lot of organizations away from Connect into something different, which is why they've committed to this kind of extended period of technical support. Here again, just another slide here with those dates. But the key takeaway is, basically everything related to Connect is affected by this life cycle. So, all the phones, all the hardware, all the software. And they said big milestones coming up, end of new system sales, July 6th. I don't think anyone's buying any new systems between now and then, even with that date there. But certainly the end of add-on sales is an important one for people who are currently on Connect and you have a system. The end of next year, Mitel's not going to be selling new components. We will be able to get RMAs and things like that, but certainly the big impact might be licensing. So if you're anticipating needing to make licensing changes after that date, it's definitely something we'll want to think about and start talking about now. Also, end of hardware repair, so a year before the end of technical support, we'll anticipate they're going to run out of RMA parts. Additionally, while they are planning to maintain stock in everything that they can as needed, they do anticipate that they're making kind of last buys on some of the stuff this year and kind of stocking up. Potentially, we could be in a situation where they don't have a particular replacement part, even in between now and then. So while they're stocking up based on anticipated demand, so they'll be able to support RMAs through December 31st, 2028. We could be in a situation where potentially certain parts, particularly ST switches, some of those components, this may run out of those early. They're planning not to, but they are trying to gauge demand for that. So something to keep in mind as part of your planning thinking as well. But that is what we wanted to share with everyone today. Thank you guys so much for joining. Hopefully that sets the stage for where things are headed. And again, do want to point out, of course, our lunch and learns. Highly recommend if you're in the Orlando or Tampa areas or nearby that you attend one of these. If we're not able to, we are going to be hosting some specific webinars here after these lunch and learns in the near future and moving forward, specifically talking about what's going on with Connect, what the important transition dates are, and what the options are for upgrading your system to My Voice Business, or what other options are out there. Obviously, if maintaining an on-premise PBX isn't something you want to do, we've got great deals with RingCentral and things like that as well that we can focus on. So that's what we'll be mainly focusing on in these lunch and learns, and hope that we can see everyone there.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you, Mike. And like I said, I'm going to go ahead and upload this onto our YouTube channel, and then I will share the recording plus all of the information for our lunch and learn for everybody that registered for this webinar. And then Robert will be reaching out to everybody. I know he's already sent out a couple of emails about it, but he'll be reaching out to everybody just to let them know about this upcoming lunch and learn as well. So again, thank you for joining us today, and we look forward to seeing you next month, and then hopefully in person at these lunch and learns coming up. Thank you, everybody.